A cold, gray dawn pressed in on Santa Monica Pier. The ocean mist crept across the slats of the boardwalk, swallowing up what little color was left from the neon lights that blinked stubbornly against the chill. Distant waves crashed, muted by the fog, while gulls wheeled overhead, their cries lost in the hush. There was no one out this early. No joggers, no street vendors, only the sound of the wind and the slow, rhythmic slap of tide against pilings. Emily Harper moved quietly through this world of faded dreams and cold air. She was in her mid-30s, hair twisted into a loose knot, a hoodie pulled up against the morning cold. Beneath that calm surface was something unsettled, the residue of sleepless nights and memories she couldn't quite shake. Emily's shoes squeaked on the damp wood as she walked, her eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. Force of habit from years as a veterinary nurse and, perhaps, something more personal. That's when she saw the shape, a battered bench, nearly invisible in the mist, and on it, a filthy, shivering German shepherd puppy, tethered by a red leash. The puppy's fur was matted and caked with mud. Blood had dried around one paw, and her head hung so low Emily wondered if she was alive at all. Next to the dog, on the cold wood, sat a suitcase. It was faded pink, covered in peeling unicorn stickers. A child's suitcase, worn at the edges but lovingly decorated. Emily's heart hammered as she slowed, every sense sharpening. She knew what abandoned animals looked like, but this was different. There was a story here, and it hurt just to look at it. The bench was coated in dew, and the puppy didn't stir as Emily knelt beside her. Only her eyes moved, wide and dark, staring straight through Emily as if she were looking for someone else. The stillness was eerie. Emily's breath came out in a puff, clouding in the air, and then she noticed a scrap of paper taped clumsily to the suitcase handle. "She's broken. I can't fix her. You try." For a moment, Emily just knelt there, letting the chill seep into her bones. She looked down at the dog, Bella she would later learn, and felt a wave of anger mixed with sorrow. How many times had she seen this? People giving up when things got hard. But something about the suitcase, the careful stickers, the shaky handwriting, made it so much worse. This wasn't just an animal dumped by the side of the road. There had been love here, or at least the hope of it once. Emily reached out, fingers gentle, and touched the red leash. Bella didn't growl or whimper. She didn't move at all, except for a twitch of her ear, so quick, so slight, Emily almost missed it. The dog's gaze was hollow, as if she'd already left this world behind. She opened the suitcase, hands trembling, half afraid of what she'd find. Inside were a tiny t-shirt with Bella written on the tag, a faded purple collar, and a juice box that had leaked and gone sticky. There were drawings, too, crumpled and childlike. One of a dog with a crooked leg, one of a girl with pigtails hugging the dog tight. Emily's throat tightened as she pieced it together. Some child had loved this puppy, and now something terrible had happened. A seagull landed nearby, eyeing the scene. The world seemed to hold its breath. Emily felt the weight of decision press on her shoulders. Should she call animal control? Wait for someone to return? But as the sun edged over the horizon, lighting the mist with faint gold, the silence around her felt like a warning. If she waited, it might be too late. The wound on Bella's leg looked old, infected. The dog was barely breathing, locked in some private battle between pain and resignation. A jogger appeared at the far end of the pier, music blaring from his earbuds. He glanced their way, frowned, then kept running. Emily knew no one else would stop, not at this hour, not for a broken puppy. She knelt lower, speaking softly, her voice barely a whisper above the surf. "Hey, sweetheart. You're not alone. I promise you're not alone." For a long minute, nothing happened. Then, as if testing whether hope was still possible, Bella's ear twitched again. Emily reached out, inch by inch, until her hand hovered near Bella's muzzle. The dog shivered, but didn't pull away. In that small gesture, something shifted. A fragile signal that maybe, just maybe, all was not lost. Emily pressed her palm gently to the ground, offering warmth, patience, and the kind of stubborn love she wished someone had offered her when she was a child. The mist began to lift as the sun grew stronger, and somewhere beneath the grime and fear, Emily saw a flicker of life in Bella's eyes. She made a choice right then, as the world woke around them. No one was ever truly broken, not if someone was willing to try. The world came alive as the sun finally broke through the clouds above Santa Monica. But for Emily and Bella, time seemed to stand still. Emily cradled the puppy in her arms, her jacket wrapped around Bella's thin, trembling body as she hurried across the boardwalk. Every step was urgent, every second precious. Her mind spun with memories, flashbacks of long, frantic nights at the animal hospital, of hands slick with antiseptic, of lives balanced on the edge. Emily's car was parked in a lot half a block away, the interior cold and littered with old coffee cups and vet textbooks. She slid into the driver's seat with Bella on her lap. Not caring that the fur and blood would stain her scrubs, the engine roared to life and she dialed Hope Haven Animal Shelter on speaker, her voice tight. "It's Emily. I'm bringing in a critical case. German Shepherd pup, found abandoned, leg injury, severe hypothermia. Be ready." She didn't wait for questions. Tires screeched as she pulled out, weaving through light morning traffic, her eyes darting between the road and the fragile life beside her. Bella's breath came in ragged, shallow bursts. A part of Emily wanted to sob. Another part kicked into professional overdrive, assessing, planning, refusing to let fear take hold. By the time they arrived, the shelter was stirring to life. Doors banged, voices echoed, and a handful of volunteers rushed to meet her. Dr. Jimenez, the shelter's lead vet, met her at the door, clipboard already in hand. "What have you got, Emily?" she explained quickly, not wasting a single word as they hurried down the hallway. Linoleum cold underfoot, walls plastered with photos of happy adoptions. In the exam room, under bright fluorescent lights, the situation became even more stark. Bella was limp, her body unmoving as Dr. Jimenez and a pair of techs began the exam. Old blood crusted her paw. When the team pressed gently around her leg, Bella flinched but made no sound. Her eyes remained vacant, her jaw slack. The silence was deafening. Emily forced herself to watch, to stay focused, even as a tide of old grief threatened to pull her under. She remembered her own dog, Daisy, a mutt rescued as a child, who had died after being hit by a car. That ache, never fully healed, rose now like a ghost. Emily swallowed hard, pushing it down, knowing this moment was about Bella, not her own pain. Dr. Jimenez shook his head, face grave. "This isn't fresh. This leg's been broken for weeks, untreated. She's got infection, could be septic. I don't know if she has the strength to fight." A hush fell over the room. The staff exchanged glances, some hopeful, others resigned. The unspoken question hung in the air. Was it kinder to let Bella go than to ask her to suffer more? One of the techs, Lisa, bit her lip. "We've got 3 other urgent cases, Jimenez. Even if she makes it, the odds—" Emily's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "We owe her a chance. Someone just left her, like trash. She deserves better than that." Her boss, the shelter manager, stepped in. voice low but firm. Resources are tight, Em. We have to make hard calls. Intensive care takes time, money, space. I'll cover her shifts, Emily said, almost pleading. I'll stay overnight. I'll do whatever it takes. For a moment, no one spoke. Emily felt the weight of every scar, hers, Bella's, the whole messy tapestry of rescue work, crushing down on her shoulders, but she refused to look away. Let me try, please. Dr. Jimenez nodded, ever so slightly. We'll give her pain meds, IV fluids, start antibiotics. But if she crashes, she won't, Emily interrupted, her hands trembling as she gently stroked Bella's matted fur. Not tonight. Bella was prepped for treatment. Needles slipped into her tiny veins. Bandages replaced filthy rags. Throughout it all, she never whimpered, never lashed out. Just watched Emily with those broken, ancient eyes. She doesn't even flinch, Lisa whispered. It's like she's already somewhere else. As the day wore on, Emily made herself a fixture by Bella's side. She ate dinner in the break room, barely tasting the vending machine sandwich. The shelter bustled with activity. Phones rang, new animals arrived. The world kept spinning. But for Emily, there was only the faint beep of the monitor and the rise and fall of Bella's shallow breaths. As night fell, the shelter emptied out, and the debate continued. In the office, her boss argued for reason. We can't save them all, Em. If she doesn't respond tonight, Emily cut him off, voice raw. No one is ever truly broken. Not if you give them a chance. She dragged a chair into the kennel, settling in for the long night. The walls seemed to close in, pressing with the heaviness of so many lost causes. She pulled the pink suitcase from the counter, opened it, and placed the t-shirt inside Bella's cage. Someone loved you once, kid, she murmured. I'm not giving up on you. Hours passed. Bella lay unmoving, the faintest flicker of life still fighting inside her. Emily read aloud from her veterinary notebook. Passages about hope, healing, survival, her words a gentle thread in the darkness. She whispered stories of dogs who beat the odds, of humans who stayed when everyone else left. Sometime after midnight, as rain began to fall outside, Emily saw it. A tiny twitch. The barest movement of Bella's paw. Hope. It was enough to keep Emily awake all night, whispering, promising, daring the universe to let them both win. Rain drummed steadily against the windows as dusk faded into another restless night at Hope Haven Animal Shelter. The place, so busy during daylight with barking, laughter, and the clatter of feeding bowls, felt almost sacred now, cloaked in the hush of after hours. Every footstep, every sigh seemed amplified. For Emily, it was as if the world had shrunk to the size of one small kennel. Just her and the battered German shepherd puppy the staff had started calling Bella. Time slowed in that narrow room. Fluorescent lights flickered, casting a pale glow over Bella's cage. Emily sat cross-legged on the linoleum floor, wrapped in a faded hospital blanket, her hands folded quietly in her lap. Bella lay curled on her side, nose buried beneath her tail, the pink t-shirt, her only comfort, tucked close to her chest. The suitcase, with its unicorn stickers, was now propped just outside the bars, a silent guardian of some other life. For hours, Emily simply kept vigil. She watched the rise and fall of Bella's chest, the way the dog's eyes would flick open at every sound and then close again, heavy with exhaustion. The storm outside matched the heaviness in Emily's own heart. She recognized this silence, not just the absence of sound, but the weight of it, the way it echoed off walls and filled every empty space with things unsaid. Emily thought of all the animals she'd seen come and go over the years. The fighters, the ones who clung to life with tooth and claw, and the ones who faded quietly. worn down by sorrow and pain. Bella was different. It was as if her spirit had slipped away, leaving only the barest shell behind. Emily wondered what loss looked like to a dog. Did Bella mourn the little girl who dressed her, loved her, and finally abandoned her? Did she replay that last morning in her mind the way humans did, wishing for a different ending? She read from her old veterinary notebook, the pages dog-eared and scribbled with reminders. Her voice was soft and steady, almost a lullaby in the quiet. Sometimes healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but about loving what remains. She didn't expect an answer. The words were for herself as much as for Bella. The other staff checked in throughout the night. Lisa left a cup of strong coffee. Dr. Jimenez looked in through the glass and gave a tired thumbs up before heading home. Still, Emily stayed. It was the only thing she could offer, her presence, her stubborn refusal to leave, even when hope felt as fragile as glass. Bella ignored food and toys. She barely reacted when Emily reached through the bars, offering a gentle pat or a soft word. Even the promise of a walk, a treat for most dogs, was met with stony silence. Bella's body was rigid, her eyes fixed on the kennel door as if she were waiting for someone else, someone who wasn't coming. Emily fought the urge to weep. She'd seen animals give up before, but this felt more personal, more like looking into a mirror. Memories surfaced unbidden. The loss of Daisy, her childhood dog, the fights with her mother after her father left, the years spent patching her own heart, one rescue at a time. Grief, she realized, was a language Bella spoke fluently. Maybe that was why she couldn't turn away. On the third night, with thunder shaking the windows and the clock ticking past midnight, Emily noticed something different. She'd been reading aloud about a rescue dog who had learned to trust again, her voice steady, even as her eyelids drooped with exhaustion. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Bella shift. Slowly, painstakingly, the dog dragged her thin blanket closer to the kennel door. It was barely a movement, but it was the first time Bella had shown any interest in her surroundings since arriving. Emily's breath caught. She set her book aside and watched, hardly daring to move. Bella's nose pushed the blanket against the bars. For a moment, she rested her chin there, her eyes meeting Emily's. The connection was tentative, uncertain, but real. Emily leaned closer, keeping her movements slow. "Hey girl," she whispered. "It's okay. I'm here. You're safe." The storm raged on, but inside the shelter something gentler unfolded. Bella's eyes lingered on Emily, searching, questioning. The air felt charged, as if hope itself were daring to flicker back to life. Emily stayed by the kennel until dawn, barely sleeping. She stroked the unicorn suitcase and wondered about the child who'd written Bella on that tiny shirt. Did she know what had happened to her dog? Did she lie awake at night, missing the warm weight of Bella beside her bed? As the first light crept through the windows, Emily realized she was facing a painful truth. Was hope a kindness, or was she keeping Bella alive only to prolong her suffering? The thought gnawed at her. What if all her efforts were just a selfish attempt to mend her own old wounds? But then she saw it, the way Bella's gaze tracked her every move, the cautious way she inched her blanket closer. It wasn't surrender, not yet. Maybe hope was fragile, maybe healing was slow, but as long as Bella was willing to try, Emily would too. She made a silent vow as the sun rose. "I will not leave you in the dark, not tonight, not ever." And in that sliver of morning, as the storm finally eased, Emily allowed herself a thin, trembling smile. For the first time in days, she believed there might still be a future worth fighting for Bella, for herself, and for anyone who'd ever felt abandoned and alone. The world outside the shelter was waking up, engines rumbling on the street, horns echoing as commuters rushed to beat the clock, birds calling above the drizzle. But inside the low-lit rows of Hope Haven, the pace was slower, quieter, like time itself had chosen to hold its breath. Emily felt the change in the air as soon as she stepped back into the kennel room, carrying a fresh bowl of warm broth and a cautious hope she tried to guard close to her heart. Bella was curled in her usual corner, her face buried in the pink t-shirt like a child hiding beneath a favorite blanket. The shirt, with its faded unicorn print and the shaky Bella stitched in purple thread, had become a lifeline, something to anchor her in this strange, frightening place. Emily paused at the door, letting her presence settle before she knelt beside the bars. "Morning, sweet girl," she murmured, her voice soft as the dawn. "It's just me." She placed the bowl down, the rich scent of chicken filling the kennel. Most dogs would leap at such a meal, but Bella only twitched her nose, her ribs fluttering with each careful breath. Emily's patience had become almost ritualistic. She never pushed, never forced. She'd learned, the hard way, that trust was something earned in inches, not miles. Today, she decided to try something new. She opened the kennel door, slow and steady, then slid the pink t-shirt even closer until it rested right beside the bowl. The gesture felt intimate, as if she were returning something precious rather than just feeding a hungry dog. For a moment, Bella's head lifted. She looked at Emily, eyes wide, wary, but no longer empty. Emily held her hand out, palm up, a single piece of boiled chicken resting on her fingers. She kept still, barely breathing, letting Bella make the next move. The room was so quiet Emily could hear the faint tick of the clock in the hallway, the rain whispering against the glass. Time dragged on, minutes passed. Emily's arm began to ache, but she refused to move. Slowly, so slowly it felt like a dream. Bella pushed herself up and crept forward. Her legs trembled, each step a battle between instinct and fear. She stopped, inches away from Emily's hand, her nostrils flaring. The world shrank to just the two of them, the offering of food, the possibility of trust. Then Bella's cold nose brushed Emily's fingers. A small, almost imperceptible sigh escaped her. It was the first real sound she'd made since arriving. Emily's eyes burned with tears she wouldn't let fall. "That's it," she whispered, her voice barely a thread. "You're safe. I promise." Bella took the chicken, her jaws working slowly. For the first time, she ate in Emily's presence, her hunger finally overcoming the wall of grief and fear that had kept her silent and still. The staff, watching through the window, pressed hands to mouths, their faces shining with relief and wonder. It wasn't just food. It was hope. Afterward, Bella nosed the t-shirt, curling her body around it. Emily stayed near, careful not to crowd her, simply existing in the same space, breathing the same air. She spoke in a low, soothing tone, telling stories about other dogs who'd come through the shelter, some broken, some wild, some just lost and waiting for someone to see them. A wave of anxiety crashed through Emily, unexpected and sharp. She feared that Bella was only attaching to her out of desperation, not healing for her own sake. She knew all too well how animals could bond to one caretaker, only to spiral when that anchor was gone. Was she really helping Bella, or just delaying the inevitable? Her doubts gnawed at her, but she pushed them aside. This moment, she told herself, mattered. Healing, she'd learned, wasn't always a straight path. Sometimes you had to celebrate every tiny victory, even if the bigger battles still loomed. Later that day, Emily stayed after her shift, lingering by Bella's kennel long after the lights in the hallway flickered off. She watched as Bella, exhausted but no longer withdrawn, finally closed her eyes and fell into a restless sleep, the pink t-shirt tucked beneath her chin. For the first time, Emily dared to believe that recovery was possible, not just for Bella, but maybe in some way for herself as well. When she stood to leave, she felt Bella's gaze on her back. She turned and saw the dog's eyes, awake and tracking her movements, not with fear, but with curiosity, a glimmer of something brighter, something that could one day become trust. Emily whispered, "I'll be back. You're not alone. Not anymore." As she stepped out into the night, her heart lighter than it had been in months, she realized that the world hadn't changed. The rain still fell. The city was still noisy, indifferent, sometimes cruel. But here, in this small, quiet room, something had shifted. A broken dog had taken her first trembling step back toward life, and a woman with too many scars had found a reason to hope again. Trust, Emily thought, is a door that only opens from the inside. Tonight, for the first time, she believed Bella might choose to open it. The world outside was bursting with color now. Spring sunshine streaming through the trees, car horns, laughter from kids skipping down the sidewalk. But inside Hope Haven, for Bella and Emily, time moved to its own cautious rhythm, every moment measured in tiny, hard-won steps. Each day brought a new challenge, a new chance for hope to be tested. After that first breakthrough, the shelter staff grew more invested, sneaking glances at Bella's kennel and murmuring words of encouragement as they passed. Emily arrived every morning, often before her shift officially started, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her heart racing with both excitement and nerves. On the third morning, Emily brought Bella outside. The door squeaked open, letting in a burst of sunlight and the sounds of the waking city. For a long minute, Bella shrank back, her body rigid, tail tucked, eyes huge and uncertain. Emily didn't pull, didn't coax. She simply waited, holding the leash slack, her own breathing slow and even. "It's okay, girl. Whenever you're ready." The puppy hesitated at the threshold, nose quivering, the world outside both invitation and threat. With the gentlest tug, Bella put one trembling paw on the concrete, then another. And then, with a final glance back at Emily, she stepped fully into the morning. The sidewalk was a minefield, cars roaring by, a delivery man dropping boxes with a crash, a pair of dogs barking behind a fence. Bella flinched at every noise, pressing herself to Emily's leg. But each time she didn't freeze. She kept moving, every step a small act of courage. Emily crouched low beside her. "You're doing so good. You're braver than you know." They made it halfway down the block before Bella's nerves gave out. She spun, trying to bolt for the safety of the shelter. Emily held her, murmuring reassurances, letting Bella set the pace. Bit by bit, they worked their way back, the whole trip taking nearly an hour. Inside, Emily knelt and scratched Bella's ears. For the first time, she saw a faint wag of the puppy's tail, a flicker, quick and unsure, but unmistakably there. "That's my girl," Emily breathed, pride swelling in her chest. Word spread through the shelter. Even the most cynical volunteers started to believe. One afternoon, as Emily and Bella sat in the small outdoor pen, a family visited. Parents and a boy, maybe 8, quiet and gentle, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He watched Bella with solemn eyes, kneeling at a safe distance. Emily smiled at him. "You can come closer if you want. She's a little shy." The boy nodded. He sat cross-legged, at the edge of the pen. After a while, he spoke in a low, thoughtful voice. "She's not sick. She's just really sad." The simplicity of the statement struck Emily. She looked at Bella, then back at the boy. "Yeah, I think you're right." He reached out, slow and deliberate, and let Bella sniff his hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with the faintest wag, Bella pressed her nose against his fingers. The boy's face broke into a tentative grin, and Emily felt tears prickle behind her eyes. Inside, however, things weren't always hopeful. Bella's progress was fragile. Potential adopters came and went, glancing into her kennel and then moving on. "Poor thing's damaged," one woman whispered to her husband. "She'll never be right." Emily's jaw tightened. She wanted to shout, to explain that scars were only proof of survival, but she held her tongue, saving her fight for Bella. At night, Emily often lay awake in the tiny staff room, scrolling through photos of Bella on her phone. She captured every tiny victory. The moment Bella sniffed a flower in the garden, the way she curled up at the foot of Emily's bed during a thunderstorm. The first time she barked, quiet, uncertain, but real. Each picture was a piece of proof that hope, however shaky, was worth clinging to. In the shelter, Bella started to sleep at the front of her kennel, her eyes fixed on the door. She learned the rhythm of Emily's days, tail wagging more confidently whenever her friend appeared. They built new routines. Morning walks around the block, slow and steady. Afternoons spent in the sun-dappled pen, Emily reading aloud while Bella dozed at her feet. But still, the setbacks came. One afternoon, a larger dog lunged at the fence, snarling. Bella cowered, shaking so violently Emily feared she'd undo all their progress in one instant. She gathered Bella in her arms, whispering, "It's okay, I've got you, you're safe." Over time, the trembling eased, but the memory lingered in Bella's cautious movements. Yet each day brought something new. A squirrel darted across the path, and Bella's head snapped up, curiosity flickering in her eyes. She sniffed the wind, ears pricked, daring to wonder about the world beyond her fear. One morning, as the city came alive outside, Bella greeted Emily with a little yip, her tail wagging so hard it thumped the kennel door. Emily laughed, real, unguarded laughter, and for a heartbeat, the weight of the world seemed lighter. Hope wasn't a straight line. Healing never was. But Bella, with each tiny step, was showing everyone that it was possible to be broken and still find a way forward. Emily watched her sleep that night, the pink t-shirt tucked beneath her chin, and whispered a promise into the darkness. "I'm not giving up on you, not now, not ever." Outside, the world spun on, loud, messy, and indifferent. But in the quiet corners of Hope Haven, one dog, one woman, and a handful of believers kept fighting for another day. Spring pressed on, the world outside the shelter bursting with green shoots and fresh possibilities. But for Emily and Bella, the journey ahead remained uncertain. Every inch gained a hard-won victory. Bella's physical wounds had begun to heal. The infection subsided. The fur grew back in uneven patches. And with each day of therapy, she learned to put more weight on her leg. Her limp would never fully disappear. But now, when the wind ruffled her ears and the sun touched her muzzle, there was a trace of pride in her posture. She moved with the careful confidence of a survivor. Emily walked the beach with Bella most mornings. The sand was cool, the air sharp with the briny scent of the Pacific, and the sound of distant laughter from early surfers drifted on the breeze. It was here, with the surf tumbling at their feet, that Bella seemed most alive. She would sniff at shells, hesitate at the edge of the tide, then dart back with a youthful flick of her tail. Emily would throw a stick, never too far, never too hard. and watch Bella limp after it, barking once in delight, even if the fetch ended only a few feet away. One morning, as Emily watched Bella chase after a tangle of kelp, she found herself thinking about her own scars. She touched the small tattoo on her wrist, a faded outline of a daisy, for the dog she lost as a child, and remembered her mother's angry tears the night they said goodbye to her father. Loss, abandonment, those old ghosts, they clung to her, shaping every gentle gesture, every cautious hope she offered Bella. They stopped to rest on a driftwood log. Bella curled at Emily's feet, nose in the sand. Emily spoke softly, more to herself than to the dog. Funny, isn't it? How we keep carrying things long after we should have let them go. A gull screeched overhead. Bella looked up at Emily, then, after a long moment, nudged her knee with a wet nose. Emily smiled, blinking away the sting of memory. That afternoon at the shelter, they worked with Dr. Jimenez on Bella's physical therapy. The exercises were slow, lifts, gentle stretches, small walks around the padded room. Emily praised her at every step, offering treats and encouragement, but there was a new worry settling in her chest. Shelter policy was clear. Employees were discouraged from adopting animals they'd personally rescued. Attachment can cloud judgment, her boss had warned her. We want our people making decisions in the best interest of the animal, not out of guilt or desperation. Emily had argued her case. Bella was different, her connection undeniable. But the rules were rules. For now, she could only foster hope, not make promises. That evening, as the sun set behind the pier, painting the sky in streaks of lavender and gold, Emily brought Bella out for one last walk. The boardwalk was quiet, vendors packing up, skateboarders flipping tricks in the gathering dusk. Bella paused, sniffing the air, tail held high. Suddenly, she let out a bark, deep, uncertain, but loud enough that it startled a group of teenagers nearby. Emily knelt, shocked and laughing at the same time. "That's it, girl! You found your voice!" It was the first sound Bella had made beyond a whimper or sigh since her rescue. Emily praised her, running her hands through Bella's fur, feeling the vibration of life reawakening inside the dog's battered frame. The bark was awkward, rusty, as if Bella herself couldn't quite believe it belonged to her. They sat for a while on the sand. Bella pressed against Emily's side, both of them quiet, listening to the rhythmic hush of the sea. Emily thought of all the days she'd spent fighting for hope, for a chance to prove that broken things could still be beautiful. She saw herself reflected in Bella, both scarred, both stubborn, both refusing to give up. Back at the shelter, tension simmered. Lisa, the vet tech, cornered Emily in the hallway. "You know what the rules say. You can't keep her, Em. At least not yet." Emily's jaw tightened. She's not ready for anyone else. If she leaves now, I know. But you have to play by the book, or you risk everything. Even your job. Later, when the lights were low and the building emptied out, Emily returned to Bella's kennel, kneeling beside the bars. Bella looked at her, eyes bright and questioning. Without thinking, Bella placed her head on Emily's knee, a quiet echo of how Daisy, Emily's childhood dog, used to comfort her when the world felt too sharp. Emily rested her hand on Bella's head, and for a long, wordless moment, everything felt possible. In that stillness, Emily realized something important. She couldn't rewrite the past, for herself or for Bella, but she could stand witness to it, refuse to let the story end in heartbreak or silence. She could fight for second chances, for new beginnings. When Emily finally rose to go, Bella whined, a soft, pleading sound, like the hush of a forgotten lullaby. Emily whispered, "We're not finished, you and me, not yet." As she walked out into the cool night air, stars scattered across the sky, Emily felt hope settle in her bones. A hope born not of easy victories, but of hard-won trust and the promise that, sometimes, love really does get a second chance. A thunderstorm was brewing over Los Angeles, rolling in from the ocean with a force that rattled windows and sent uneasy waves slamming against the Santa Monica pier. Emily could feel the electricity in the air even before the first drops of rain started to fall, could sense that something was off as she finished her late shift at Hope Haven. She moved through the shelter, double-checking latches, comforting anxious dogs, her mind never far from Bella, her girl, her shadow, her proof that second chances could exist. Bella had become a fixture at the shelter. Her limp was less pronounced now, her eyes more alert, her tail curling shyly when Emily entered the room. Staff and volunteers cheered each new step, each tentative bark, each wag. Emily tried to convince herself that everything was moving in the right direction. Yet that night, she felt a knot in her stomach that wouldn't go away. The storm hit just as Emily was packing up. Rain pounded the roof, thunder shook the walls, and the shelter's ancient wiring flickered, throwing long, shuddering shadows across the kennel floors. Emily moved from room to room, checking that every animal was safe, dry, and secure. Lightning slashed the sky. She paused outside Bella's kennel, watching the dog curled up around her pink t-shirt, Suitcase close, eyes reflecting each flash from outside. "Good night, Bella," Emily whispered, her hand lingering on the bars longer than usual. Bella's ears twitched, and she thumped her tail once in reply. Emily gathered her things, pulling on her raincoat, and braved the storm. Outside, she hurried to her car, the wind whipping her hair, but something nagged at her, a whisper of unease, a sensation that she'd missed something. She almost turned back, but dismissed it as worry. After all, Bella was safe behind two locked doors. She told herself she needed to let go, to trust the routines she'd built. But storms have a way of undoing the best-laid plans. Sometime after midnight, with the power flickering and the wind howling, a door was left ajar. Maybe it was the old latch, rusted and unreliable, or maybe it was the rush of a volunteer hurrying home in the rain. No one would ever know for sure. What mattered was that the door swung open, just enough for a small, determined dog to slip out and into the labyrinth of hallways, out into the wild, wet night. It was Lisa, coming in early, who first noticed the empty kennel. Her cry of alarm sent shockwaves through the shelter. Emily, already halfway to work, nearly crashed her car when she got the call. She barely remembered grabbing her keys, running the last block through the downpour, lungs burning and heart in her throat. Inside, chaos reigned. Staff searched every room, every storage closet, every shadowed nook. They found muddy paw prints near the side exit, the pink suitcase missing from its usual spot. Panic set in. Emily's mind raced. Bella was out there, injured, frightened, maybe alone for the first time in months. Blaming herself, Emily relived every painful loss she'd ever endured. Daisy's sudden absence, her father's departure, even the fractured trust with her own mother. She imagined Bella shivering in an alley, hiding beneath cars, her limp slowing her trust betrayed yet again. Guilt wrapped tight around Emily's chest. "Don't do this," Lisa said softly, gripping Emily's arm. "It's not your fault. We'll find her." But Emily could barely hear her. She pushed through the doors and into the storm, calling Bella's name until her voice went raw. Staff and volunteers fanned out, flashlights bobbing in the rain, their shouts swallowed by thunder and wind. Hope Haven's community rallied. Neighbors, animal lovers, even city workers joined the hunt, some calling her name, others combing alleys and parks. Social media lit up with Bella's photo, the story of the abandoned puppy now carried by dozens of strangers praying for a happy ending. As dawn approached, Emily's fear became a relentless drumbeat. Exhausted and soaked, she stopped at the edge of the boardwalk, rain trickling down her neck, heart pounding in her ears. She remembered the suitcase, Bella's suitcase, the child's drawings, the faded t-shirt, anchors to a past that Bella had never truly let go. If Bella had run, where would she go? A sudden clarity cut through her panic. The pier. Bella's story had started there. On that cold, gray morning, her world defined by heartbreak and waiting. If Bella was lost, maybe she would go back to the place she'd last seen the person she'd loved, the place where Emily had found her, broken but alive. Emily sprinted, ignoring the ache in her legs, her shoes slapping against the wet pavement. The city was waking up, the storm lifting. Seagulls cried overhead. She reached the pier just as the sun crested the horizon, gold and red spilling across the mist. And there, sitting beneath the battered bench where their story had begun, was Bella. The pink suitcase lay at her side, damp and battered, but intact. Bella looked up at Emily, ears back, body tense but eyes bright with something new. Not just hope, but recognition, trust, battered but unbroken. Emily fell to her knees, arms wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. Bella hobbled forward and pressed her head against Emily's chest, tail wagging with a shyness that made Emily's heart ache. "You came home," Emily whispered, clutching Bella close as the sun rose higher, painting them both in light. "You found your way back." And in that moment, under the awakening sky, Emily knew that second chances weren't just for dogs. They were for everyone who'd ever been lost, everyone who'd ever dared to hope for a new beginning. The sunrise washed the pier in gold, casting long shadows over the battered bench where so much pain and hope had collided. The rain had passed, leaving the air fresh, every surface glittering with droplets. Emily stayed on her knees beside Bella, arms wrapped tight around the trembling dog, heart pounding in her chest, as if the world might split open from relief. For a long moment, they didn't move. Emily pressed her face into Bella's damp fur, breathing in the earthy, salty scent, the trace of rain and fear. She felt Bella's chest rise and fall, quick and shallow, but alive. So alive. The city woke around them, but for Emily, there was nothing in the universe but this dog, this fragile bond, this wild, messy love that had pulled them both through. When she finally pulled back, Emily saw something different in Bella's eyes. Not just the wariness of survival, or even the longing for safety. It was a question, one that only Bella could ask, and only Emily could answer. "Are you staying even now? Am I really yours?" Emily sank onto the bench, soaked and shivering, and patted the wood beside her. Bella hesitated, then limped forward, dragging the pink suitcase with her teeth, determined not to let it out of her sight. Emily watched, heart swelling, as Bella struggled to hoist herself up, finally settling against Emily's side, her head on Emily's lap. It was the first time Bella had leaned into her own choice, uncoaxed, born not from habit or desperation, but a decision made deep inside. The sound of the waves crashed below, a rhythm older than pain, older than fear. Emily stroked Bella's fur, her hand steady, voice low. "They gave up on you. I never will." She didn't need to say more. Bella closed her eyes, letting her weight rest fully on Emily for the first time. A full surrender to safety, trust, and belonging. It was a moment years in the making. A moment stitched together from nights spent whispering hope in the darkness. From every setback, every tiny step forward. For Emily, everything shifted. All the rules, all the shelter policies, all the warnings about attachment. They seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a single blazing clarity. Some promises are worth breaking, some lines worth crossing. Sometimes the risk of loving too much is less than the cost of not loving at all. The sky brightened. Crowds began to gather at the pier. Life humming back to normal. Emily tucked the suitcase under her arm, lifted Bella gently, and carried her to the car. She ignored the pang of fear in her chest, the voice that warned her of consequences. She would deal with them later. Today, she refused to let Bella spend another night alone. Back at her apartment, Emily created a safe, warm haven. Extra blankets on the couch, the pink suitcase on a shelf in the living room, Bella's favorite t-shirt laid out like a welcome mat. Bella explored in cautious circles, her nails clicking on the hardwood, sniffing every corner, tail flicking with nervous excitement. Emily followed, her heart pounding with each uncertain step. She texted the shelter, honest but unapologetic. Bella is safe with me tonight. She needs this. So do I. The hours blurred together. Emily heated chicken broth and fed Bella by hand, then sat with her on the floor, reading quietly as Bella dozed, one ear flicking every time Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. As night fell, thunder grumbled in the distance, but the world inside Emily's apartment was gentle, filled with the soft glow of lamps, the scent of clean fur and warm soup. When bedtime came, Emily lay down on the couch, pulling an old quilt over her legs. She half expected Bella to sleep by the door or curl up in a corner, but instead the dog climbed up beside her, head heavy on Emily's chest, eyes closed in utter trust. Emily wrapped her arms around Bella, feeling the slow, even rhythm of her breathing, the steady beat of her heart. In the darkness, Emily whispered, "I don't know what tomorrow brings. Maybe I'll lose my job. Maybe the world will fall apart. But tonight, you're home. Tonight, you are mine. And I am yours." Bella let out a long, shuddering sigh and melted into sleep. Emily lay awake, afraid to move, afraid to break the fragile spell. She watched the city lights blink outside the window, listened to the hush of rain on glass, and felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Morning came softly. Bella woke with a gentle nudge of her nose against Emily's chin, a silent promise to greet each day as a new beginning. Emily smiled, heart aching and hopeful. She didn't know what would come next, what rules she'd have to face, what explanations she'd have to give. But none of that mattered. Not really. The real breakthrough wasn't in the therapy or the training, not in the routines or the medical charts. It was in this moment, on this quiet morning, when a dog once shattered by loss chose connection over fear, chose hope over heartbreak. And Emily, battered by her own past, chose to risk everything for love. They had found each other at their lowest. Now, for the first time, both believed they deserved something more. Evening sunlight painted the walls of Hope Haven's visiting room in warm gold, filtering through the dusty blinds and landing on the row of photographs lining the far wall. Hundreds of faces, human and animal, frozen in moments of reunion and hope. Emily sat on the floor with Bella pressed against her side, the dog's head resting heavily on her knee. The shelter was quiet at this hour, a rare peace settling in before the bustle of evening volunteers and new arrivals. Emily tried to focus on the present, but her mind was scattered, torn between hope and heartache. In front of her sat the pink suitcase, freshly packed with everything that marked Bella's journey. The red leash, the faded unicorn t-shirt, the battered juice box, each item carrying the weight of 1,000 memories. Emily's hands shook as she folded the shirt, tracing the childish scrawl of Bella's name on the collar, feeling the rough fabric and the softness of old love. She looked down at Bella, whose eyes were half closed in contentment, and felt a rush of conflicting emotions: love, pride, fear, and the sharp ache of impending loss. She wondered if she'd done enough, if the nights spent holding Bella through storms, the countless gentle words, the refusal to give up when others turned away, could ever be enough to erase what had come before. Or if, maybe, healing meant learning to carry pain without letting it define the future. "Hey," Emily whispered, running her fingers through Bella's fur. "You're not broken. You're just hurt. And you are loved, exactly as you are." Bella nuzzled closer, her breath slow and warm. Emily rested her forehead on the dog's back, letting the moment stretch, refusing to let go even as the world around her whispered that endings were coming. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Angela and Mike stood in the hallway, framed by the last rays of sun. Angela clutched a folder to her chest, Mike's hand resting gently on her shoulder. There was a weight to their silence, a history Emily recognized in their tired smiles and tentative movements. She saw the sadness in Angela's eyes, the kind that lingers long after loss. The nervous hope in Mike's, a silent question. Could this dog really belong to them? Emily stood and beckoned them in, her heart pounding as she watched Bella's reaction. Bella sat up, body tense but unafraid, studying the couple with deep, searching eyes. She looked first at Emily, then at Angela, and in that brief exchange, something passed between them. A wordless understanding, a shared grief that needed no explanation. Angela lowered herself to the floor, careful and slow, and extended her hand. Bella sniffed, then inched forward, tail tucked but curious. After a moment's hesitation, she rested her head in Angela's lap, eyes closing as Angela stroked her ears. Mike knelt beside them, his voice thick with emotion. "We lost our daughter last year," he said softly. "We weren't sure if we could ever open our hearts again. But when we heard Bella's story, we felt something. Like maybe we could help her heal, and maybe she could help us too." The room fell silent except for Angela's quiet tears. Emily knelt beside them, laying her hand atop Angela's, her other arm circling Bella. She spoke without thinking, words tumbling out, raw and unfiltered. "She's been through so much, but she's never stopped trying. She's taught me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to love with the scars, not in spite of them." Angela nodded, wiping her cheeks. "We're not looking for perfect. We just want to try." Mike smiled, tentative but real. "Maybe that's all any of us can do." Emily felt something shift inside her, a deep, wrenching release of the fear that had gripped her for weeks. She realized that loving Bella didn't mean clinging, didn't mean keeping her close forever. Sometimes love was letting go, trusting that the bonds you built could outlast distance and change. They talked for a long time, sharing stories and worries, hopes and doubts. Emily explained Bella's routines, her triggers, her victories. Angela and Mike listened closely, taking notes, promising to go slow, to be gentle, to never give up. When the time came, Emily hugged Angela tightly, passing her the pink suitcase. It felt like handing over not just Bella's belongings, but her own faith, her belief that brokenness is not the end, that every story deserves a fresh chapter. Bella pressed close to Emily, then turned, nuzzling against Angela's knee with a tentative wag. As they left, Emily stood in the doorway, watching Bella walk between Angela and Mike, head held high, suitcase swinging from Angela's hand. The ache in Emily's chest was sharp and bittersweet, a pain born not of loss, but of growth. She felt pride and hope mingling with the sadness, knowing that both she and Bella were stepping into the unknown, stronger for having found each other. That night, alone in her apartment, Emily cried, not with despair, but with gratitude. She lay awake thinking of Bella's journey, of all the small miracles that had brought them to this point. She understood now that healing is never linear, never easy. It is a process, full of setbacks and doubts and moments of sheer, stubborn love. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Bella. Thank you for letting me be your second chance." In her mind's eye, she saw Bella curled up in a new home, loved for exactly who she was, scars and all, and Emily, changed forever, ready to offer that same chance to another lost soul when the time came. Weeks passed in the gentle blur of early summer. At Hope Haven, the cycle continued. New animals arrived, new stories began, and Emily moved through her days with a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had grown used to the rhythm of letting go, but Bella's absence was different. A soft ache she carried with her, a space beside her bed that felt both empty and full at once. The shelter buzzed with talk of Bella's adoption. Staff and volunteers who had doubted her survival now swapped updates and smiled at the mention of her name. Emily found herself drawn to the front desk, where a photograph of Bella, head held high, pink suitcase at her feet, had been taped to the bulletin board with the word home written in thick black marker. The picture made her chest ache, but it also gave her hope. One afternoon, her phone buzzed with a message from Angela. "Would you like to visit? Bella's waiting for you." Emily's heart leapt. She barely remembered the drive across town, the way the world seemed to shimmer in the golden sun. She arrived at Angela and Mike's modest house, the garden lush with wildflowers and the air warm with the promise of summer. Angela met her at the door, her face open and welcoming. Bella's pink suitcase had a place of honor on a living room shelf, not hidden away but displayed proudly, a testament to everything she'd survived. Emily stepped inside, nerves humming. She called out gently, "Bella?" In an instant, Bella came running, her gait still a little awkward, her coat glossy and clean. She leapt onto the rug, tail wagging so hard her body wobbled. Emily dropped to her knees, arms open, and Bella threw herself into the embrace, licking Emily's face with unguarded joy. Angela and Mike watched from the kitchen, their smiles soft and proud. "She hasn't forgotten you," Angela said. "She waits by the window every morning, just in case." Emily laughed, wiping tears from her eyes. "She looks happy. She looks whole." Angela knelt beside her, laying a gentle hand on Bella's back. "She's taught us so much, about patience, about loving through the pain, about starting over. She's still nervous sometimes, and we have our setbacks. But every day she lets us in a little more." Emily glanced at the shelf, at the suitcase and the worn t-shirt tucked carefully inside. "I used to think that if I just loved her enough, all her scars would disappear. But maybe it's not about erasing the past. Maybe it's about carrying it together and making something new." Mike nodded, voice low. "She's teaching us how to love again, without conditions, without needing to be perfect." They sat together on the floor, the afternoon sunlight bathing them in warmth. Bella dozed with her head on Emily's knee, snoring softly. Emily listened as Angela shared stories of late-night walks, thunderstorm cuddles, and the slow but steady progress of healing. There were setbacks, a slammed door that made Bella flinch, a child's shout that sent her scrambling for cover. But each time Angela and Mike were there, gentle and patient, never forcing, never giving up. "I think," Angela said quietly, "she saved us as much as we saved her." Inspired by Bella's journey, Hope Haven launched a new initiative, Hearts with History. Emily was at the center of it, working with a team to pair animals with visible or invisible scars, with families who understood what it meant to be broken and to heal. The shelter's philosophy shifted, not just fixing, but honoring the stories of pain and survival, creating space for imperfect animals and imperfect people to find one another. Word spread quickly. Families who had once been turned away now found hope. Animals overlooked for years finally found homes where their quirks were met with patience and understanding. Emily poured herself into the work, drawing strength from Bella's story, sharing it with volunteers, with new adopters, with anyone who needed a reminder that second chances were always possible. On weekends, Emily returned to the Santa Monica boardwalk, retracing the steps of that cold, gray dawn. She watched the waves crash, listened to the distant laughter, and let herself remember every moment, every setback, every breakthrough, every time she'd whispered promises into the darkness. The world felt different now, brighter, more forgiving. Sometimes Angela and Mike brought Bella to the pier. Together they'd walk the same path where Bella's journey had begun, the suitcase swinging at Angela's side. Bella would trot ahead, her limp barely noticeable, stopping to sniff at benches and greet passing strangers. Once a child asked to pet her, and Bella hesitated only a moment before stepping forward, head low but eyes bright. Emily knelt, smiling at the child. "She's a survivor. She's teaching all of us to be brave." When it was time to say goodbye, Emily would hug Bella close, breathing in the familiar scent, and whisper, "Thank you for being my second chance." Driving home, she thought about what rescue really meant. Not just the moment you pull a dog from the rain or patch up their wounds. True rescue, she realized, was about staying present, about choosing over and over to love what is broken, not with the goal of fixing, but with the hope of making something beautiful from the pieces. The lesson stayed with her, long after the sun set behind the pier. Wholeness isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to keep loving, even when it hurts. Hope Haven's Hearts with History program flourished. The ripple effect spread outward. Volunteers, adopters, children, and old men, all touched by the story of a battered dog and the people who refused to give up on her. Emily found herself changed, too. Braver, softer, more willing to risk her heart, knowing that the act of loving imperfectly, fiercely, stubbornly was enough. The story ended where it began, with Emily walking the boardwalk at dawn, her heart open, her mind at peace. She glanced at the sunrise and smiled, thinking, every new day is a second chance, for dogs and for people alike. She left one last thought for anyone willing to listen. Be someone's second chance. You never know whose life you'll change, including your own.